Hello everyone, this is Aaditya Mehta and you are listening to podcast on personality development. People say money can't buy happiness, but there is one thing which money can buy, and that is financial freedom. And the best way to become financially independent is to manage your finances. Sounds simple, right? But when it comes to implement personal finance in our lives, it becomes little complex for us. So, to guide us with that, we have a person who has been featured on Business Insider, CNBC, Market Watch, and on the popular podcasts as well. And now she is on another popular podcast. So, stay tuned. I'll get her in a moment. Till that time, you give a follow to this podcast and show us your love by providing your valuable rating to this podcast. So you do that, and I'll get back with the guest in the moment. Hello, and welcome back to today's episode. In this episode, we have a person who started a movement of FIRE, that is literally FIRE, FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. She is also a fellow podcaster, hosting a popular podcast, Optimal Finance Daily. Please allow me to welcome Diania Merriam. Yeah, so Diana, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I did want to offer one little bit of clarification. I definitely didn't start the FIRE movement. The FIRE movement has been around for a long time, probably since the 80s. There were a few people writing books and talking about this topic of financial independence. And so I would say that the FIRE movement became really popular around like 2010. There's kind of a resurgence in some of these ideas. It's not like any kind of rule book or a program. It's really just kind of a movement, a collection of thought leaders that are writing books and podcasts, and people kind of, the goal of it is financial freedom. And so there's no specific rules. It's more of, I guess, a mindset that people are subscribing to in order to kind of retire from the workforce much earlier than traditional retirement age.
Wow, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something which many people don't know, I guess, and that includes me as well. However, you are also a founder of Econome, and that literally spells like Econome. And first of all, I have to know who is that person who actually gave this name, because it's such a smart name, that is Economy. And of course, like, you are a founder of Econome Conference. So, first of all, I would love to know about that person. And if it is you, from where did you get that idea?
That's actually a funny story. I'll give you the
wonderful
story for that right now. So, when I first came up with the idea for this conference, because I saw that the FIRE movement had a lot of online communities, but I thought there was a real need to meet in person and build real relationships in person, because what's the point of retiring early if you have no one to hang out with? I like to say financial independence is better with friends. And so I came up with this idea for this conference, but I was struggling on the name. And I went on Reddit, and there's a not Reddit thread, a subreddit called I Need a Name. And a lot of people put like want names for their children, and they're trying to think of names for their children on that subreddit. But what I did is I put all of my ideas around this conference and kind of what the goals were and what I wanted to do and just kind of the whole vision. And I said, I'm struggling with a name. And there was one guy who commented in my question, and he gave me like 6 names, and Econome was one of them. And when I ended up using it, I wrote to him and I said, thank you so much for, I mean, it was his idea, right? And he offered it to me
Mhm.
so generously. And so I said, I'd love to offer you a free ticket to the event. Like, come join us. And I'm so thankful that you gave me this name. And I never heard from him. He was just this like angel that just dropped in, gave me the answer, and floated away. And now that name is actually a registered trademark, because it's unique enough to justify as a registered trademark. And so, it's thank you so much for acknowledging the name. It's there is a fun story behind it.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it's one of the things, and I'm pretty sure like someday he was an angel for you, but someday when he'll listen to this podcast, he'll definitely feel that, oh, that is the story. I mean, she was trying to reach out to me. Anyways,
And if
that's
he's listening to this, please contact me. You have a free ticket for life to the conference. Please, like, if I would love to find him, but he just disappeared. And I
wow.
assume it's a him. Maybe it's a her. I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. You don't know who that person is, but that actually gave you a trademark name.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't happen on daily basis. It just happens on rare occasions. But great. I mean, I really love the name. Anyways, moving ahead straight into the topic, diving into it. If the first thing which I had to ask, and that was you told about the history of the FIRE movement, exactly what it is. You mentioned that it is not a rule book, but
Mm-hmm.
what exactly it is. And nowadays, as on this podcast, the listeners are basically between the age of 18 to 35 as well, who would love to know about this movement, because they are the ones who are doing their jobs on daily basis, and they want to retire early as soon as possible and build some wealth. So what is this about?
Sure. So financial independence, retire early. It's very much challenging the conventional thinking that you're going to work your 9 to 5 job until you're 65. That's kind of the stereotypical way that people think about work. I'm going to work a full-time job my whole life, and then I'm maybe going to enjoy 20 years of retirement. And I think that people in the FIRE movement started questioning these societal norms around work and money and saying, you know what, you only get one life. And this idea of working maybe in a job that you don't enjoy, which many of us don't enjoy our work. And so the idea of doing that for 40 years, 60 years or longer, and then only enjoying a few years in retirement at an age where maybe your body's failing, maybe you don't, have those as close, fun relationships and later in life,
Mm.
because you've spent most of your life working and neglecting some of the more important things in life, like your health and your relationships. And so I think the idea behind the FIRE movement is saying that's not good enough. Life is too short. And when it comes to money, it's an incredibly powerful resource. And we don't think that most people are leveraging this resource to its full potential. And so that's really a lot of what we talk about in the FIRE movement is how do you extract more value out of money? And I think money and work and retirement is just wildly misunderstood. And so that's why it was really gratifying for me to discover the FIRE movement. I read a couple of blogs and books and I listened to podcasts on it. And it really challenged my framework around work and money, and really kind of opened my eyes to what's possible. Now, I will tell you that I was financially illiterate through my 20s. I didn't know anything about money. All I knew is that I should probably be making more of it, right? Most of us just think if I had more money, it would solve all of my problems. And that's what I thought through most of my 20s. And that's what I did. I focused on climbing the corporate ladder, making a really good 6-figure income, and I thought that it would solve all my problems. But what I realized is that increasing your income is not enough. The way you build wealth is in the gap between your income and your expenses. So if you're increasing your income, but you're also increasing your expenses, which is known as lifestyle creep, right? When your lifestyle kind of
Yeah.
inflates to be more expensive and extravagant, and you buy a bigger house and the nicer car and the more extravagant possessions, what happens is there's no gap between your income and your expenses. And when there's no gap, there's no wealth building. Because what we need to do to build wealth is take that gap and invest it so that our money can make more money. And so that was probably the big light bulb moment for me when I realized that increasing my income was not enough. I needed to increase the gap and I needed to invest that gap. And that really changed everything for me.
That's really, up to the mark answer. I mean, there are so many people out there that are listening to this, and they would be thinking about it a lot. I mean, I'm pretty sure if they are listening it in the morning, they are definitely not sleeping in the afternoon, and if they are listening it to this at night, they are definitely not sleeping at night, because this is something which normally people would do. I mean, most of the people would do when the income increases, the lifestyle, you go ahead and try to get some privileged life, I would say. And then you think like, what, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. Basically, when you do that, okay, what I feel is, whenever the income is increased, you often go to certain things and you buy certain stuff, and then it's like done. And you think that now from next month I'm going to save money, I'm going to increase the gap and so on. But that doesn't happen in the next month as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to another month, then it goes to another month, and so and so and so.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say if there is a person who has just got an increment in his, job, and he exactly knows where to spend that money rather than actually saving it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you advise to that person? Let's say if he's planning in this way that, what, from next month I'm going to invest, but that doesn't happen, and so and so and so. So what would you advise to that guy or a girl who has just got the increment?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very common, like you described, that we all tell ourselves that we're going to do it later, that we have plenty of time. But one of the keys to investing well, especially if you're going to invest in the stock market, is you need a long time horizon. So when you start investing when you're very young, you need less money than if you start investing when you're older, right? Because the money makes more money. It compounds over time. So the more time that you have in the market, the faster your wealth is going to build. And so I think this idea that we're going to start later because when we have more money later, then we'll be able to put some away. It's a way that we trick ourselves into never doing it, right? Because here's the thing. If you can't manage $1,000, then you definitely can't manage $1 million. Right? This is why people who win the lottery, 70% of them are broke in 5 years. People who win millions of dollars, they get it and they buy stuff, and then all the money's gone and they're bankrupt again. People that are like star athletes that go into the NFL and they get these multi-million-dollar contracts, they have what we all think that we want, this big influx of money. And what do they do with it? They mismanage it, and then it's all gone. So I think what we need to do is not think that having more money is going to solve our problems, but becoming financially literate and educated on what to do with the money that we do have. That is where we start, right? And I think that there's a couple of mindset shifts that need to happen. First of all, I think that we need to value saving and investing more than we value stuff. And that's a very challenging thing to do because our cultures around the world, we have been we have been conditioned to be consumers since we were born. We have been conditioned to desire luxuries, right? And this is what keeps us trapped because we spend all our money on stuff and then we don't have any money left over to invest and to save. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you think about how positive it feels to buy something new, a new shiny car, a new bigger house, a new purse, we know what it feels like to get that jolt of pleasure when we buy something. We have never felt the pleasure of having $1 million in the bank. So we don't even have a frame of reference of how much peace of mind and contentment can come from building wealth. So we are chasing this very short-term pleasure. It's called the hedonic treadmill. When we chase pleasure, we buy the new thing, and then that pleasure fades very quickly, and then we're on to the next new thing, right? I think we need to shift our mindset to recognize that the best things in life are free. The best things in life are relationships and your health. And a lot of that is free. And I think when we really chase after that material abundance, what happens is we will never experience time abundance, creativity abundance, and relationship abundance. And those are the three kinds of abundance that I have right now that I wish more people could experience, because this is what makes life so sweet. It's not having a big house and a fancy car. It's being able to take a leisurely walk in the afternoon and have full autonomy over my time and be able to create the things that I want to see in the world without any pressure for it to provide for my livelihood. That's true freedom, And so I think in order for us to get there, we need to become a little less materialistic, but I understand how challenging that is because, again, it's ingrained in us to desire these luxuries. But why don't we desire freedom more than we desire possessions? Why don't we desire close relationships and health more than we desire possessions? That's what's going to start to help us save and invest more versus spending money on stuff.
Wow, that's pretty amazingly said, that you have to make sure that your mindset has been shifted from getting towards those materialistic things rather than, having that peace of mind when you have $1 million in your bank account. And another thing which you said about everything in this world which we need is completely free, like health, relationship, and time abundance, as you mentioned. And the moment you said that, it just made me realize how much I want to become a financial independent guy. And there are so many people who would love to do that, right? But there are two categories of people. Okay. There is one category who chases those materialistic things and they want, to live a luxurious lifestyle. And then there is another kind of people, or another category of people, who wants to build something of their own, their business, let's say. So who wants to build a business, and they feel like they are doing a job, and what they are doing is they want to invest that money into building something big of their own, the business of their own. But at the same time, they don't have any security, let's say, and they are investing into the business without even knowing what it's going to turn out in the future. So what would you like to say about that? Like, should a person invest a good amount of money over there, or he should be really cautious about that money and think over it, what he needs to think, if he needs to think about it?
Well, I'll say that entrepreneurship is incredibly risky.
Yeah.
And I think there's some statistic out there that 90% of entrepreneurs fail. And so it's a pretty risky type of investment, right? But there are various types of investments. You can invest in the stock market, you can invest in real estate, you can invest in your own business. Those are the three main ways that you can invest. I would say that business ownership, depending on your skill set, depending on your experience, depending on your financial stability and standing at the time that you start your business, can be incredibly risky. So I'll tell you, like the first year that I started my business, I took a 40 grand loss, which for most people could be devastating, right? But for me, because I had so much financial security, I didn't even feel it. Right. All of my other financial needs were met. So I think that when you prioritize your financial health in maybe the early years when you're working a job where you have an employer and you're trading time for money, you can take that money and you can invest it in, say, the stock market, to be able to build a degree of wealth that insulates you from some of the risks of entrepreneurship. And so I have had the luxury to build my business without taking on any debt. I'm completely self-funded. I don't have any investors. And so And I'm not dependent on my business for my livelihood because I started my business at a time in my life when I was already financially secure. You'll hear all these amazing stories of entrepreneurs that had their dream and they drained their 401k and they sold their house and they took all their money and they put it into their business and it worked out for them, right? You only hear about those stories when they actually work out. The large majority of them do not work out. And so I would say, yes, you should live your dreams, but be smart about it, right? Don't risk all of your money on an entrepreneurial endeavor that has a 90% chance of failing, right? Just like I'm not going to put all of my I invest in the stock market. I'm not going to put all of my money in one stock. I want to diversify. I want to protect my money in a smart way. And so I think business ownership is wonderful. I am very glad that I waited until I had a degree of financial stability before I started my business. I don't think that for me personally, and there are people that are amazing, have amazing business minds, and they don't need to take the path that I took. Yeah. But I would recommend that when you have kind of a more traditional career path where you're working for someone else, you're learning skills that are going to serve you very well when you start your business. I think when you start a business very young and you don't have a lot of experience, there could be benefits to that, right? You're too naive to know that what you're doing is a bad idea. And so you have kind of the confidence of inexperience can actually be helpful for some people. But I think for most of us who want to have a more measured approach, let's focus on building financial stability first, and then look at our business as an investment and use our experience to make better decisions about it.
Wow, that's really wonderfully said. And throughout your answer, it seems that you also have, like you mentioned, that you have secured your financial stability first and then you started your own business. And you have done that by investing, let's say, in stocks, in real estates, and in many more things. I am assuming that. So the thing is, most of the people don't really know about that investments as well. They have to be financial literate about it as well. And becoming financial literate is sometimes can be a tough challenge to go for, because you are earning some good amount of money, then you shift your mindset that no, I want to start saving and I want to invest. And since there are so many people around you who will say that, oh, don't invest in that, because you do get influenced because you don't have that financial literacy. And you go over there and people start influencing you by saying that no, you just keep your money in the bank account. When you invest, it might you might suffer loss as well. And then you don't know what to do about it, right? Because you don't have that financial literacy. And because you don't have that financial literacy, you are easily getting influenced by the people who are putting words in your ears. And they might not have that much amount of financial literacy as well. It might be just a half knowledge which they have acquired from somewhere and they put it on you. How can a person start thinking more of an investing perspective rather than just saving it in their bank account? That's number one. And for a newcomer in the market, who has just passed out of college, or who has just got into a good designation in an office and now he needs to start investing, so what should be the first step for them for starting to invest?
Sure.
What should be the first step in going towards that market?
So, two questions here. How do you overcome the fear of investing because you don't understand it very well? And then how do you kind of make decisions and start, right? Yeah. And so I'd say for the second one, how do you make decisions around investing? I think there's a few core principles to know. And I know your audience is all around the world, so you guys are all going to have different investing options, right? But in general, I think that a lot of when it comes to money, most of us are driven by the emotions of fear and greed. And so Fear, we're going to address in a minute. But when it comes to greed, this is where you see get rich quick schemes. This is where you see some financial advisor saying, if you give your money to me, I'm going to invest it in a way that's going to beat the market, right? I'm going to make you a 30% return overnight. I'm going to make you more money than you could ever do on your own. Give it to me and let me do it for you. Here's the thing. I would love to empower your audience to no one will ever care about your money more than you will. And so I think it's really important to never invest in something that you don't understand. So take the time to understand and then invest. If you're doing it out of greed because you want to make money super quickly, like I'll give you an example. I had a family member who called me and he said, I want to invest $1,000 a week into this cryptocurrency. What do you think about that? And I said, well, I don't invest in cryptocurrency because it's a speculative investment and it is something that people are using to get rich quick. And I know that tried and true investment principles are that you grow your money slowly over the long term. And so I don't need to grow my money quickly because I'm perfectly fine with the rate that it's growing at currently, right? The part that I can control the most is how much I can contribute to my investments, not how much they're growing or not growing, right? And so that's the part that I can control and that's the part that I focus on. But anything that's get rich quick that you don't understand, don't do it. Okay? That's kind of the first thing. Right. The second thing is to really understand the stock market. I think for most people, this is where you're going to build most of your wealth, right? There's three main ways that you can invest. It's in the market, it's in real estate, and it's in your own and in a business, right? And there's kind of variations on those three things. But in general, those are the three things. If someone's trying to sell you something that's some obscure insurance product or investment, and you don't understand it, just don't do it, right? Take your time to understand the stock market. And so to address the second question around fear, the reason why people are so afraid of losing money is because they don't understand the natural volatility of the stock market. The stock market is like a roller coaster. It's going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? And so when people see the roller coaster going down, they go, oh my God, I'm losing money. Yeah. So here's the thing. What you're seeing in the ups and downs is you're seeing unrealized gains and unrealized losses. You only lock in those losses when you sell. And that's exactly what people do. They get scared because they're seeing the stock market go down and then they sell and they get out. Or they try to time the market, right? But always remember that time in the market is way better than timing the market. No one wins when they time the market. You want to expect volatility. And when you expect it, you become less afraid of it. Because if you look at the data over long periods of time, no one has lost money in the stock market investing in total market index funds over periods longer than 15 years. And so, yeah, I'm going to see my money go up and down and up and down and up and down. But you know what? I'm only investing money that I don't plan to touch unless I'm not going to touch that money for 10 years, 20 years, maybe 30 years. I'm investing for my elder years. And so it doesn't matter if my money goes down because I'm not going to pull it out for 30 years. So what do I care what it's doing now? The best thing to do is to automate your investing and to ignore it and leave it alone. Don't watch it, especially if you're going to get emotional about it because you don't understand the roller coaster. It is supposed to happen that way. Right. And so I think that's what happens is that the financial services industry overcomplicates investing so much that you feel like you can't do it yourself. And they make you scared about, oh, it's the roller coaster. It's going down. It's going up. You're going to lose money, right? All of that is nonsense. It is a wonderful way for them to make money because they want you to give your money to them, for them to manage it for you. I encourage you to increase your financial literacy so much so that you realize that you don't need them. I don't have a financial advisor. I think there are periods in my life when I'm coming down, let's say when I'm coming up with a drawdown strategy or withdrawal strategy on my retirement accounts, I'm probably going to want to pay an advisor for their time, not assets under management fees. I'm not paying them a percentage of my portfolio. That is madness. I would pay them a flat fee for their time to give me unbiased, unconflicted financial advice and financial planning. The act of investing has never been easier. Okay. Here's another thing I'll say about investing. And I'm getting on my soapbox about this. You can tell I get very passionate about this. But you do not need to beat the market to reach a financial goal. Your money will compound over time in the market. You don't need to beat it. You can match the market, right? The goal of investing is to not beat your neighbor because he got 10% and you only got 6%. The goal of investing is to meet a financial, like to meet a milestone. Let's say I want to invest to get $1 million in retirement. I just want to get that $1 million over a period of time. I don't need to beat my neighbor. That's not the point of investing. So don't feel this need to beat the market. Matching the market to reach a financial goal is 100% okay.
Right. Wow. That is so wonderfully explained. And I can, yes, completely, I can say that you're really very passionate about it. And I can see that passion in your voice as well.
It's so misunderstood. And most financial advisors out there are going to take a wildly inappropriate percentage of your money just for the simple fact that you don't understand how the stock market works. You know, I talked to a financial advisor the other day and I showed them a chart that showed that over a 30-year period, they are gouging 30% of this person's portfolio in their fees and their 2% fee. And I said, how do you justify taking that much money from someone's portfolio? And she said to me, well, if they didn't have me, they would panic sell. So the answer to panic selling is to hand over 30% of your portfolio to someone for them to stop you from touching your money. No, the answer to that is education. And that's what we're doing here today. We're helping people understand that you are 100% capable of managing and investing your money. You have to get over this belief that it's overcomplicated because it doesn't have to be.
Wow, that is wonderfully said. And I really, really, appreciate the example which you just gave about a financial advisor. And I do feel sometimes that, yes, they take a load of charge, but the reason for that is just, so that we don't panic. And, that's where the huge chunk of money goes to them. And I really appreciate that. However, moving on to the segment where, what about the people who have, and there are many people who have just started doing jobs, okay? Like, and you mentioned that a person should start investing as early as possible. But when, let's say, a grad student starts to do a job, he doesn't have much money and he doesn't earn much. And most of his, money goes into, let's say, partying, or sometimes, and like occasional parties, or sometimes for the regular needs and everything else. What do you feel about those things, like for a grad student or for any person who earns less, basically? What would you suggest them? Like, how can they invest into the market and, get their money increased over a period of time?
Sure. So there's really only one thing that you need to know about money. And all of this is just kind of expanding on this one principle: spend less than you earn. So you're right. If you don't have a gap between your income and your expenses, then there is nothing to invest. But I will tell you that for the most part, what I see is that there is no gap because people simply aren't paying attention. That is the first step to money management. You need to be paying very close attention to how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. And typically, the simple act of looking at it and growing awareness around it will change your behavior just simply by paying attention, right? And so this act of budgeting, right? A lot of people get it like overwhelmed by this idea of budgeting. Budgeting is the simple act of telling your money where to go versus wondering where it went, right? A lot of us at the end of the month, we say, wait a second, I made my checks. I got, my salary this month. It's all gone. Where did it go? It's because we're not paying attention to where it went. And so what we need to do is create a budget, create a simple spreadsheet of, this is what I pay in rent. This is what I pay for my utilities. This is what what are my fixed costs? Because there are certain costs that we know are going to be the same every month. My rent, for example, right? And then there are other costs that are going to be variable. How much am I paying for groceries every month? How much clothing and kind of the entertainment and accessories and those kind of things that are nice to have, but not need to have, right? And so we
Hmm.
build a budget around what we can afford in all of those categories, kind of starting with our most basic needs, which is your housing, your transportation, and your food. And again, this idea of a gap between your income and your expenses, one way to grow that gap is to increase your income. That is one way. But usually the easier way to do that is to lower your expenses. For some people are like living the bare minimum. Their expenses are super low. There's no way for them to reduce them anymore. But for many of us, if we took a really hard look at how do I be more resourceful about getting this need met, right? I need to feed myself. That is a need, right? But
Hmm.
do I need to go out to dinner every night? No. I can bring my lunch to work. I can pack a bag for, I can cook all of my food. I used to, I still do. I cook all of my food. The stove's behind me and I've got dinner ready for when my fiance comes home, right? And
Yeah.
so when you buy a car, don't buy like the most expensive car. Buy a reasonable, reliable car that is not a status symbol. What's a better status symbol than a car? Money in the bank, $1 million net worth. That's a better status symbol than having a really fancy car, right? A car is a depreciating asset that loses value as soon as you buy it, right? Don't put money into a depreciating asset. Buy a reasonable car that you can afford, hopefully that you don't have to take out debt on, and drive that into the ground, right? Don't replace it until it actually needs to be replaced. And
Right.
so I think there's a lot of things that you can do to lower your expenses, but you have to really be paying attention to where your money's going so that you can start to think creatively about how to optimize those expenses and how to be more efficient and resourceful about getting your needs met.
I mean, I completely agree with that. And I would say 2 years back, I wasn't even aware about budgeting. And I mean, I must say I was really bad at financial literacy as well. And approximately, yeah, 2 years back, I met this amazing person and he told me about this application and saying that, you know what, you can actually do budgeting on this. Just try doing it. And when I did that, I did found out that it's a really bad thing. I mean, I wouldn't say it on this episode. I mean, I wouldn't tell it, but still, I would just say that it was really really bad, and it has improved over time when I started budgeting like with good sense that okay, this needs to be this much, not more than that. And
Mm-hmm.
that has really helped me as well. So yeah, I mean, it's really really beneficial. And audience, as I mentioned in each and every episode, I really hope that you are writing this down. I mean, I always tell you that you have to sit with a book and a pen when you are listening to this episode, because it has so much values, right? And if it just adds more and more value when you remember it. And you can listen to this podcast for like 2 3 times, or you can write it down and make sure that you save that bullet points, and then use it and implement in your life as well. And that's the main aim of this podcast, so please do that. Anyways, going towards the last segment, Diana, I mean, and this is a really important segment. There are people who have made mistakes, let's say.
Mm.
They are already there, and you know now, and they are, let's say, they are 30 or maybe 35. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
started investing sooner, and they are already broke. Let's say there is no gap at all,
Mm-hmm.
and they are doing the same mundane job every day,
Mm-hmm.
and they are earning that much amount of money. What can they do to actually, and let's say they have a debt as well, because
Mm-hmm.
since everyone wants to live a luxurious life, and nowadays there is a huge storm,
Mm-hmm.
of being debted, being in more debt, because nowadays each and everything has an EMI. each and everything now, there are credit cards which comes at your doorstep, and there is EMI in each and every stuff which you want to buy, and those EMIs are really less. That's what we feel, but in actuality we are paying much more than actual price which we had to pay for that product, right? So let's say there is a point in their life that their expenses exceeding of
Mm-hmm.
what they are actually earning, you know
Mm-hmm.
so they are in debt, and they are already 30 or maybe 35, and now they want to get out of that debt and become more financially independent. How can they do that?
Sure. So there are very tactical things that you can do to improve your financial situation. You come up with a budget, you pay attention to your money. I know in the US, the way, like when I didn't know about any of this stuff until I was 28 years old. I found myself 30 grand in debt from simply not paying attention, right? And so how I figured that out is I ran a credit report on myself, which maybe there's something similar where in other countries where it shows you like all the credit cards you have open, all the loans you have in your name, if
Yeah.
they're in default, what the interest rates are, how much you owe, right? And so I looked at all of my debt collectively and realized that I was in 30 grand of debt and I had no idea, right? So the first step again is awareness. Be really clear. What is your debt? What are your expenses? What is your income? Really be able to have the courage, let your curiosity be bigger than your fear and look that situation in the face, right? And take ownership of it. Because even if it's not your fault, there's so many reasons why people fall into financial hardship. You could have had a medical emergency. You could have been raised in poverty. I mean, there are so many reasons why it may not be your fault, but it's still your responsibility to do something about it, right? And so to be able to look at that situation in the face and take ownership and not let your fear and your shame and your embarrassment get in the way of using your intellect to figure it out. I think that's step number one, because here's the thing that I think is amazing about money. It is the only thing in life that you can completely screw up and it could still be okay. You can't say that about relationships or health, right? Yeah. Money is a very impersonal, dispassionate tool. It's like a hammer, right? It's a very impersonal thing. And so I think we put so much emotion around it and we confuse our net worth with our self-worth. And that causes us to shy away from actually embracing the circumstance we find ourselves in and doing something about it, right? So I think facing reality is step number one. And remember, money is impersonal. It doesn't matter who you are and what circumstances you find yourselves in. The rules of money are the same. Spend less than you earn. You have two options: spend less or earn more. Those are really your only two options. So if you sit there and you say to yourself, I can't do either one, I would really question that assumption. I would really challenge yourself. What can you do to spend less or earn more? There has to be something, because if the answer is truly no in either case, there's nothing else to be done. I have no magical answer for you in that situation, right? You have to be honest with yourself and allow yourself to think creatively. I don't think that a brain can think creatively when it is weighed down by shame and embarrassment and feeling bad about your money situation. There's nothing to feel bad about. Money is impersonal, right? You will always be able to make more money. You will never get back this time that you're using to feel bad about yourself, right? Let that go. That does not serve you, right? Look at your money situation and come up with ways to increase your income, reduce your expenses, and let the shame go.
That's really, really amazing. And I'm pretty sure it must be helpful for so many people out there. And believe me, like, yeah, I mean, I was in that as well few years back, and I do understand each and every thing which you said, about honesty and about, you know, not being embarrassed and shameful about the situation, but rather than be brave and face the situation with honesty, and then you can move ahead and create that environment for yourself that you have to spend less, and somehow you have to earn more, and if even you are not earning more, but you have to spend less, and that should be like certain more things. So
and I do
amazing.
want to say, like, I don't want to sound insensitive. There's systemic poverty. I mean, there could be people listening to this that are in really dire situations. And I don't want to sound like I don't have compassion for that. Of course I do. Again, it could be that your situation is beyond your control in many ways, but there is something that you can control in your life. And I would hold on to that. And frankly, if you are listening to this, that says to me that you likely have access to the internet. If you have access to the internet, you may be far less disadvantaged than you truly believe, right? So question, I think if you feel disadvantaged, if you feel like there's no hope for your financial situation, I would just encourage you to challenge those assumptions. Is that really true? Is there really nothing you can do about this? Right? Because I think so much of this boils down to mindset and beliefs. And not to say that there aren't challenges, but I think there's always like an element of hope, and there's always an option that you have control over.
Right. That's wonderfully said. And that's something which I'm definitely going to hold on to. And, I'm going to do a good amount of thought process on it. And I'm pretty sure, audience, you would be doing the same. However, Diana, one last question, I promise. And that would be, if people wants to get in touch with you, if people wants to get connected with you, if people wants to search for your Econome Conference tickets, where can they find you?
So if you want to hear me talk more about money, if this wasn't enough for you, you can actually hear me talk about it every single day of the week on the podcast Optimal Finance Daily. So this is a narration style podcast where I'm reading you an article from a personal finance blogger. And then at the end, I offer about 300 words of commentary about each article. And what's great about this show is that it makes personal finance education very digestible. It's 10 minutes or less every single day. And it's a very broad range of topics, from how to make more money, how to save more, how to get out of debt, how to invest, right? A lot of mindset stuff and psychology around money. So it's a very broad, dynamic show, and money is extremely personal. Personal finance is personal. And so what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, right? These specific ways that I execute on my money management may not make sense for your specific situation. And so what I like about this show is we have about 200 different authors that are all approaching their money in different ways. So you get a real variety of content to help you kind of think for yourself. That's what I really want to empower people to do. Don't just blindly follow some financial advisor or some financial guru, right? Empower yourself to make your own decisions about money, because it's your money and it's your life. So don't blindly follow anyone. So that's why I like the variety of the show. The other thing you could do is you could go onto YouTube and look at the Econome Conference. And again, that's the ME at the end instead of MY. Yeah. And all of the videos from the main stage speakers are up on that YouTube channel. So even if you aren't able to attend the event, you're able to look at some of the content online, and that's totally free for you. And then finally, if you do want to come to the conference, the next one is scheduled for March 15th through 17th of 2024. It's happening in Cincinnati, and it's a 3-day immersive event. We're expecting about 600 people, and we're about halfway sold out. So if you do want to come join us in Cincinnati, I would advise to grab your ticket soon. But honestly, the Econome Conference is really for people that are already financially literate, that are already well on their way to financial independence. About 30% of our audience is already financially independent and retired. So they're kind of thinking, how do I live my life to the fullest, right? So a lot of the content is for them. If you're just getting started with your finances, I would actually discourage you from buying a ticket because there's so much amazing free information out there to help you educate yourself about money. So get yourself out of debt, get yourself building wealth. And when you're in the financial position to come buy a ticket, come hang out with us in Cincinnati, but don't start there, right? Start with the free stuff that you can get at the library, that you can get listening to podcasts, that you can get reading books.
Wow, that's wonderfully said. Thank you so much. And audience, I know there is a lot of information, but you are just a click away from her because I'm going to mention each and every link in the description. So all you have to do is just click on the link and you can find her. That's it, right? It's that simple. So make sure to do that. And with that being said, if this episode adds value in your life, then make sure to share it with your loved ones. This is Aaditya Mehta along with Diania Merriam signing off from this episode. See you in the next one. Till then, peace out.